Welcome back to our podcast, Framework, our podcast, and our finale on Mass Effect 3, and Mass Effect in general. I am John, one of the hosts of Framework, and with me, as always, the other host of Framework. Al, how are you today?
I'm good, man. It's a little, I guess, bittersweet being done with Mass Effect now. This is sort of one of the big milestones of the Bioware Omnibus.
In a lot of ways, this was the big one that we really were all about from the start.
Yeah, although I really love Dragon Age as well. So that is
they did a lot of good stuff.
But this, especially like as we focus more on sort of the question of like how are even as video game adaptations becoming more popular and better funded and award worthy and everything on TV, the BioWare games are not being adapted, and they're just they're like 3/4 of the way there already. That's how it feels to me.
I think it's inevitable, right? I mean, Mass Effect in particular feels like someone's going to take a crack at this at some point. I mean, maybe it'll be like a Netflix animated thing. I mean, that would be like the least, grand version of it. It might actually work, but I don't know.
I don't think so. I think this is. I think this is. I mean, you're right. It seems more inevitable than a Fallout series did, but that somehow beat it across, out of the gate.
Mm-hmm. And that was a very big hit for Amazon. So, I think Mass Effect is a bigger deal, right? Like, I think there's more of a cultural cachet for that. It's a more famous, more popular IP. I don't know. I'm such a Mass Effect guy. Maybe that's just my perspective of it, but I think. Yeah,
unfortunately, this is where like having 1.5 voices between us on this topic doesn't help us because, I am too. So it feels like a bigger thing to me. But Fallout probably has a bigger player base in 2024.
Well, because there's a show. Yeah.
And because there's been subsequent sequels that are better thought of, like post 2012. But that is also, it's just not as simple of a, Mass Effect is structured as an action movie in a lot of ways, as we talked about. So it seems like a natural fit. I don't know. Maybe there's even a sense of like, well, we have to, wanting to get this right, we have to hear a lot of different pitches. There's no way to do it cheaply. So there's just some development hell stuff that sets in. Although I don't even know the Mass Effect's in active development, really.
I don't think so.
But I think you're right. Somebody. Technically, I think its status would be in development, but you don't hear updates about it.
No, I don't know who is working on it, who would be considering it. I mean, it seems natural for one of the streamers, one of the big ones probably, to take a swipe at it. That it's right there, a Max, an Amazon, or a Netflix probably. But I haven't heard of it, and I think it might be a thing where I think it might just also be an inevitability. So they are waiting for the right pitch. It might just be that they could have done the cash out version of this.
Yeah, I mean, for all this. First of all, let's give them the pitch. Let's give them the winning pitch. That's our our thing, because we've been sort of mapping it out as we go here over the first 2 games, how we think this would work as a streaming sort of prestige series. I mean, not as prestige-y as some stuff, but because it's pretty action-oriented, pretty genre-oriented. But, it's got
as prestige-y as Game of Thrones.
Yeah, as House of the Dragon, for sure.
Right. And I mean, that's what we're here to do today, is basically to talk about the adaptation and how we would do this perfectly. We've been on this before, each game kind of merited its own. This will be the one for 3 essentially, but it'll kind of be for the whole thing. Like, what is the perfect idea? What does this look like as a show?
Actually, there's something you said there that I kind of want to zero in on real quick, which is the comparison to Game of Thrones, because, and maybe this, I think of this in terms of Dragon Age more directly, that is sort of the midway point between Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings in my mind. And, but all the BioWare stuff operates at a similar total level. Or I don't know, the Mass Effect and Dragon Age do anyway. The Star Wars stuff is directed towards the Star Wars level. But, I think this is a little less prestige-y than Game of Thrones, is what I'm getting at here. That it is, because Game of Thrones had the element of it that was, well, we're not going to serve you up simple good guys and bad guys, and
it's a deconstruction.
The good guys win. Yeah, there's a deconstruction aspect to it that gives it more of a literary. I mean, in addition to being based on literature, it has more of a literary sheen on it. And yeah, Game of Thrones what could be kind of quite pulpy, and arguably was at its best when it embraced that. But I think Mass Effect sort of embraces that more fully right out of the gate, and is a little more straightforward in that Shepard is a hero. The Reapers aren't bad guys, and it's pretty straightforward white hats and black hats here.
That's true. I mean, even if you try to add in some nuance of the renegade Paragon system, he still is the hero who saves the galaxy kind of thing. So, yeah, I suppose that is true. But I would say that, I don't think Game of Thrones really, it wasn't The Sopranos. The whole point was that it was just kind of pitched at a level of seriousness and importance that something like that would have. It was still adapted from 1,000-page long fantasy books. Yeah. It still had dragons and such and sex.
But those books in that series were still the midpoint between Lord of the Rings and The Sopranos. Or perhaps Lord of the Rings and The Wire is a more exact comparison.
Yes, but there's even there's a foot in kind of tawdriness, and
oh yes,
there is definitely an aspect to it which is just pure genre, and I essentially what I'm saying when I compare it to Game of Thrones is that I think that's where it should be pointing, where it should be, and yes, have less rape in it, obviously, like it's more of a PG-13 version of that,
right?
But otherwise, that is the tonality I think they should be approaching here. It's that size of, well, maybe not quite that size of cast, but it's close. It's dozens and dozens of characters that you're going to be acquainted with by the end of this thing that you could reasonably call your favorite.
And a dozen fictional cultures that you have to get pretty well versed in their own lore and minutia. That was one thing that Game of Thrones was excellent at, that I think people kind of forget about these days. Just how much stuff about the cultural peculiarities of Dorne it's seeped into the public consciousness.
People don't even realize how quickly they learned, the difference between the Night's Watch and the King's Guard.
The Iron Islands, exactly. and Mass Effect has to do all that. I think what we were saying, like the distinction between being R and PG-13 is apropos, and maybe like better than what I was saying about. It's not about black and white morality as much as it is just about being conventionally satisfying.
Yeah,
chaos.
I mean, it has that over. Well, I know it depends who you ask about the end of Mass Effect, perhaps, but well, I mean, we talked about that. It's not a dissimilar problem,
right?
But yeah, I think you have to admit that it's going to be way more of a sci-fi action thing, more of an Aliens than it is 2001. It is that in its core, or Star Trek, I guess. Star Trek with action scenes a little more frequently would probably be, a not bad template as well.
Yeah, the action version of Star Trek that I think I don't keep up with Star Trek in the 21st century, but it seems like
it's hard. Yeah,
that inertia is trying to drag it towards doing a more and more action oriented version of Star Trek over time.
Sure, yeah.
That's how it looks from 50 miles away, anyway, looking on the outside. This is that entirely. This is militaristic Star Trek. It's where we have guns shooting bullets instead of phasers.
Mm-hmm. So is it a war show then? I mean, on some level, I think so. I think there's just actual loss, and there is dramatic heft to a lot of stuff that is going to happen. You're going to have water cooler moments, like maybe not quite at the level of the Red Wedding, but I think you're going for that occasionally. Sometimes there'll be stuff like that.
By season 4, where we're at in Mass Effect 3, like yes, it's a full blown war show. Like war were declared by this time in the storyline. It's a little more. I don't know if it's not quite spy stuff, but it's more special forces, smaller scale operations in the first and second game. With the big battle at the end of the first game, but now this is the war game. Mm-hmm. It's World War II in space.
Yes, that's one of the great qualities of the game Mass Effect 3, and you would absolutely be carrying that over into a series. Probably 2 seasons to cover this. Seasons 4 and 5, I think, is what we were well, it's how I've been thinking of it since we started this,
Yeah.
would be wrap up Mass Effect 3 stories. And,
I mean, I think assuming you went with what we said earlier and
Mm-hmm.
made Mass Effect 2 into 2 seasons, I don't think you can then turn around and wrap up this entire Reaper War in 1 season.
And 5 is a good length for this in general, and for most shows in general. You know, it's not going to kind of drag out or just keep kind of expanding and getting bigger in the way that Game of Thrones did. That didn't necessarily help it, maybe in the final stretch. You know, this knows how it ends, and it has a very obvious kind of rising and falling action to it. So.
Yeah, when you look at like epically styled shows, it seems like 4 seasons, definitely less than 4 seasons, feels like things are getting cut off too early.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned in a different context before, nothing really good happens after the 7th season of any show, pretty much. You know, give or take, there's 1 or 2 more seasons of The Simpsons that are, you know, in their prime. But The Simpsons is an outlier.
And the point largely stands with them, too, actually. It just lasted a little bit longer. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, you break this into 2 seasons. I mean, I guess the way we've been starting out the last times is I laid out the wrong way to do this, which I'm grateful that they have not done, which is as movies. I think this is a lot simpler than the other ones. Trying to cram Mass Effect 1 or Mass Effect 2 into a single movie was kind of a challenge structurally. I think just because this is a bigger game than those, but the main storyline's not that much bigger, actually. And when it comes to these things, there's just sort of now an unwritten rule that if you're doing a trilogy of this size, you get to split the last one in half and actually make 4 movies.
Well, that started to fall away because they were all failing. I don't know. This one, I do think you can try to do. Well, it's all dependent on what the first 2 movies look like, and those movies would be a mishmash of things just sort of hung together. It'd be very hard to know what you're paying off at this point. You know.
Well, the Genophage is in there.
Yeah, it's in there.
Stuff is in there. I
think the Quarry and Geth stuff is probably resolved with a conversation in the 1 film version. You know,
this is what I'm saying, though, that because you cut all that out, there's not that much to pay off here. I mean, the only things that pay off in the main storyline missions of this are the Genophage. There's Cerberus, I guess, that's carried over to any form. The Quarry and Geth. And then, like, I guess their Sanctuary is a main storyline quest that pays off Miranda, but you don't need that in this. Yeah, exactly. You also don't need to go to Palaven to, pick up Garrus at the beginning. You can just go to the Citadel and meet with people about the need to cure the Genophage. Oh, so once you remove that, I think it's pretty straightforward to do. You open on Earth, go to Mars, pick up Liara, and learn about the Crucible stuff. Do a quick stop over at the Citadel to get your assignment to cure the Genophage, and then come back to end with the coup on the Citadel, probably. I think the only question about this,
it's still full of events. I mean, it's going to feel like Rise of Skywalker, just jumping to a new sequence every 10 minutes or so, and then barely stitched together.
That's 5 basic settings. I guess the Genophage stuff is sort of split across the Solarian homeworld and Tuchanka, although it doesn't.
Oh, you're not doing Solarian homeworld. Yeah, you're just going and curing it with Morden. Yeah,
we have 5 locations to visit total, and if you do half an hour in each, I don't think that feels super rushed. And you get a 2.5 hour movie, which is totally acceptable for this type of big, action epic.
Oh, if we split it in half, you're talking.
Yes. Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, I was like, well, you got way more stuff to do. Yeah, but of course that's.
And the second movie, you do the stuff with the Quarians and the Geth, and then maybe you try and squeeze some Leviathan material in there just for some context for the end. But if you don't have room for it, you don't, and you just go straight to Thessia, where they kill the Asari homeworld, and then do the Cerberus base and the finale on Earth. And
I suppose that's
doable.
Doable. Again, it's sort of like I think it defeats the purpose and the appeal of the series to do it that way. It is discursive. It is long. It's about finding the nooks and crannies and developing relationships with the characters and coming to understand and appreciate all the lore is sort of the chief pleasures of Mass Effect. And those are all things that are very apparent in a television show and very difficult to do in movies. So, it plainly makes no sense to do it that way. If a fan of the series were adapting it, they wouldn't choose it to do it that way. So,
no.
So, yeah. I guess you could. It's the same thing we always say.
We said this, but we said this by the others. And it does less violence to the series core appeal in Mass Effect 3's case than it does in Mass Effect 2's case. So,
yes, that's true.
Especially because here you get, like I said, when you have the license to do it in 4 to 5 hours instead of 2.5, you can stretch out a little more. The one structural question I think it presents that carries over to the streaming version that we think is a better idea is just sort of order of operations stuff. Because you could do the Citadel coup as the finale of the first movie or first season, or you can do Curing the Genophage as the finale. And I think that question turns on what you're doing with the actual finale of the series. Which ending are you going with? And if it's kind of a downer ending, then I think you want to end the first half of this on an up note of Curing the Genophage. If you're going for a happy Love Conquers All ending, then I think you want to end on a more dire note of the Citadel coup being kind of a blow, but not a triumph like the Genophage thing.
Well, I was thinking about the Citadel coup, and structurally, what does it do where it is placed in the game that would be kind of essential about having it right there? Because here's what I was thinking. What if you move the Citadel coup later into the show? Probably after Rannoch and after maybe after the events of Citadel, in a way. And it is sort of, it ushers in the end game, kind of. It places everyone who needs to be on the Citadel for the final act of this on the Citadel. And it can be kind of just like a more effective coup, maybe. Maybe the Citadel goes down, whatever that means. It's the King's Landing being destroyed kind of moment.
The elusive man does eventually sort of take over the Citadel and move it to Earth for the finale. So it could lead directly into that.
Yeah.
I do. Well, I'll need to noodle that a little bit. I do like the idea of it being something that sort of, when you're doing the Citadel DLC material, the part of the Shore Leave stuff, and then the sort of end of Shore Leave is this attack. And everybody's there for it then too.
Yeah.
And maybe even that's a factor of why.
And people are dying.
Elusive man's grand plan fails because he didn't account for, Shepard had all 15 of his dudes there. We thought Shepard was going to bring us normal 5 guys, but no, Rex was on hand and everybody else too, from the old games. But,
it gives you time to make a choice with Udina. You can either be, indoctrinated or secretly evil, or we can watch his fall, or maybe he's not evil at all. I don't know. Maybe he's, just a guy who gets killed at some point. That's an unsatisfying thing in the game. I think it can be improved on. And that's kind of the only really big significant thing that happens in the Citadel coup as it presents in Mass Effect. So, Dina's ultimate deal can be explained at any point, honestly.
You could have Shepard killing the survivor of Caden or Ashley off, depending on how you play it out. But we're kind of assuming that's not the canon playthrough or what we'd be using here. Unless we're doing the full-blown deranged billionaire scheme of running 2 different playthroughs.
Well, that's when this scheme really gets interesting, honestly. That's when you can start doing kind of crazy stuff, really divergent stuff with that. And that's interesting and cool. And but this is, I think, in any case, a scenario where a lot of characters die, maybe surprisingly. Characters you like, people like Rex or something, that you don't necessarily need for the finale. Big deaths, which is what you want in something like this.
I agree. Yes, dropping a body in the Citadel queue does go a long way. And that's the game has that possibility, but also doesn't commit to it super hard. It's not it's much, much easier to get out of this without killing off Caden or Ashley than it is to get out of the Genophage mission without killing off Morton, for example.
Right.
Even though it's technically possible to do that.
Well, that's an example of a scripted death that totally works. And, I think the game, could have used more of, and the show definitely would have more of.
Okay, so maybe we'll work our way back towards that and then have an answer when we get there. Maybe it's just like catalog some of the changes we made along the way. It's just some of the improvements that we've already kind of decided we want to do. So here they're going. We want more Dr. Chakwas.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally. Note number 1, more Chakwas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just more of a crew, more crew interaction. And
Totally.
the other things, and we want a better Udina. You said we don't want it to be such a one-dimensional jerk. There's room there. I don't know. There is one thing about that. You're right. We never learn what his deal is and why he turns, but there is like an element of that works for me, where not knowing exactly how indoctrinated he was plays up the paranoia effect of indoctrination and the sort of like, can you trust anybody thing. I think as these seasons go on, the John Carpenter's The Thing aspect of not knowing who you can trust will become more prevalent than it is in the game.
It's a bit of a failing of the game that's not a thing, unless you ascribe to indoctrination theory, of course. But
yes.
But it's kind of not a device. Not with that. Not much is done with beyond the elusive man and maybe Udina, and it's not explained well with the elusive man.
Well, I like that it not being explained with Udina does allow some room for that paranoia. The game does not exploit it to, I guess, its full its potential, and there's no reason we can't sort of do something like that starting with a better, more rounded version of Udina.
Mm-hmm.
All right, who else do we want to improve? Obviously, we want better versions of Caden and Ashley. Ashley, one, I think, is the hate for her is overblown. But
probably
just gets an actor with a little bit of charm in there. It goes a long way towards making that even the more jagged parts of that character come across as human rather than irritating.
Well, I mean, it is a question of like, we've long decided who's making it off Vermeer at this point in the show. If we're doing 2 versions of it, Red Shepherd and Blue Shepherd, on Amazon Prime, then the obvious thing is one is on the other, one's on one show, one's on the other. Is exactly what you would do then. But otherwise, that bed has long been made, and we're all in on Ashley or Caden at this point. Because I think you need to include Vermeer with that binary choice in the series. It's such a big moment.
You have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if we're only running it once, then we're sticking with Caden because we had a stronger idea of what to do with that character to make him more interesting, which was cast Jeremy Allen White, make him this twitchy or broken guy. And that maybe even like, I think I had mentioned before that in the first game, he's the one who gets the Prothean beacon sort of beamed into his head. Mm-hmm. And maybe that becomes the only reason why Shepard is keeping him around. Like he was going to be, I think they call it Cat 6 in the Citadel DLC. They're like their version of 4F to be like, mentally, whatever the guy in MASH is trying to cross-dress his way into, that sort of dismissal. And if Caden's really messed up from his old, defective implant, and then he gets this, like he was on his way out, but Shepard has to keep him around even though he's kind of unstable. That's a much more interesting character dynamic that we can introduce here.
And I think he has good scenes with Jack. There's a lot of stuff you can do with Caden, like it's the world. The world comes through more clearly in Caden's whole deal. His story is good for lore. It increases the audience understanding and empathy for the weird state of things in the Mass Effect universe. So that's good. That's all good for Caden. And you can get a lot of that,
in the first game before the Vermeer choice anyway.
That's true.
But there's not a strong argument for Ashley otherwise. I mean, we have to kind of do some more retooling there on a smaller scale level that is a little more difficult to figure out the contours of. Some of the other suggestions I had made that I think you were more or less on board with was just sort of one, less biotics out in the world generally. That Liara, Shepard, Jacob, Rex, like these people don't need access to the space magic really. Maybe Liara could do a little, but I like the idea that she's not that good at it really. And it's mainly just that she's the brains of the operation.
Yeah, it should be the essentially mages. They are mages, so treat them like mages in a sci-fi setting, and they're rare, and for sure. I mean, if somebody needs to for their character arc be biotic, then they should be biotic, and if they don't, then they shouldn't.
Exactly. So that's Jacob and Rex do not. They need to, for gameplay purposes, they need to give you biotic options, but we don't need that. Miranda, yes, okay, that should be part of her thing. Jack, obviously, it's their entire thing. But and Caden, for example, also kind of his entire thing.
Exactly.
But we don't need to water that down by having Shepard also be like better at it than them. That's a video game thing that just doesn't need to carry over. Another thing I had mentioned was I like the idea of Morden being the one to create Grunt and being his dad.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I mean, we don't need to make time for fucking Dr. O'Keefe, for God's sakes. You can just improve the characters you already have using that material.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I like the idea of having Shepard's death be in the attack on the Citadel at the end, the sort of fake out death that the game does. Have that last until the stinger after the opening credits, where you see Cerberus recovering his body, and that allows us to sort of have the collectors be more of a mystery element that is spooled out slowly over the course of that like second season, and we kind of So I like that. The other reaching back to Mass Effect 2 now, that affects Mass Effect 3 is I wanted to bring in some people from Mass Effect 3 into the Mass Effect 2 timeline in the show. Started with Javik, we talked about last time.
Javik for sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I also want to do that with Kai Lang. So,
Kai Lang is a big deal here. Let's talk about Kai Lang.
Yeah, we trashed him in the other episodes. I think the way to improve him while still making him a horrible jackass that you hate is you have him sort of assigned to Shepard and Miranda right out of the gate, Mass Effect 2. By the Elusive Man. It's like, this is my guy. And maybe he's even like, oh, I was in charge of this before. Like I was going to lead this mission if the Shepard thing didn't work out. And he's resentful of Shepard for that, blah, blah, blah. And also just, a horrible asshole. And in the early going of that second season, this kind of rapidly comes to a boil and Shepard kicks him off the mission. And that's his first sort of big clash with Cerberus, and the Elusive Man, like kind of, and fine, I'll give you your way. I don't like this. And then you have a stinger on that episode of Miranda and the Elusive Man talking about how he planted him there with this in mind all along. And like now Shepard feels like they can throw their weight around and they're comfortable and but we're still pulling the strings.
Right. That's fun. That's okay. Yeah. Right. It was actually my plot entirely that's actually that's good there.
Well, it's part and parcel of in the game. Even you get in the Cerberus base, you see the videos of Elusive Man like making it explicit that like, no, we're stalking the Normandy with the friendliest faces we can to put on a good face for Shepard, and this is sort of like good cop, bad cop of that.
Right. That's good. It's good stuff. I still like. I do like that. I mean, it basically is rebuilding Kai Lang from the ground up. I mean, that's probably going to be necessary in any case. I'm still kind of intrigued by the idea that he is the Shepard clone, that he is Nega Shepard, because that is a thing in the game. It appears in the Citadel DLC, and I think that the use of that character in the Citadel DLC, the Shepard clone that is evil, is better than how Kai Lang is used for the rest of the core game, for sure. Even though it's still just pretty functional. It's not amazing. But I like it, and I think that you could do it in a satisfying way. And I'm especially into this if we are doing two different parallel series, because if that's the case, you can do the actor playing Shepard in the other version.
Well, but they're going to be gender swapped.
Yes, they are. They are.
Yeah, okay.
But they have control over that in a lab, theoretically. Like they're rebuilding these people on a DNA level, right? That's the process of Lazarusing Shepard. So they could just change the DNA, and I mean they could do fucking whatever. It's sci-fi nonsense. It would just be fun.
Yeah. I think brought it back from the dead. Bringing back from the dead is harder than cloning. Is how it like hits me.
Yeah, right.
In my non-scientist brain, but
it doesn't have to be. It could just be some bullshit. I mean, it is. So, why not? It's fun to do that. If it's fun, if the guy playing Shepard and the male Shepard appears in female Sheps as that version's Kai Lang, and it's sort of a
crossover event.
And it's sort of a thing for the audience to understand of what is being done. I think in world, it's sort of just like, we took all your strengths and none of your weaknesses and rebuilt you. You know, it's not actually a clone or Shepard. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you're doing that weird thing, you know, why not have some fun with it?
That is so. When you first floated that idea of using the clone Shepard in that role, I wasn't totally sold on it, but I think I'm coming around now because one, that's a good way of using the double run through thing if you're doing it. But there's also, I think the cloning stuff is already inherent in this universe. Like it's inherent in Miranda's backstory, particularly if she is the elusive man's daughter, as we decided.
Like it would be dumb if we couldn't do it at this point. And yes. You know, like it would be like we've got interstellar flight or travel, but not cloning.
We're closer to the cloning stuff right now in real life than we are to any of this other stuff. But even beyond that, just the fact that if we've established the elusive man is Miranda's father in this, and she is this genetically engineered thing, he's already into genetic engineering, and he's got Shepard in there to do experiments on. It would be weird if he didn't give it a shot. But the other thing I like about this, because the other idea floated around is having Jacob or Miranda be a sort of like in the one of them were killed off in Mass Effect 2, return as this cyborg assassin that, you know, indoctrinated thing in the Kai Lang role. And I don't see any reason why we can't do all of these things, really. The elusive man's not going to only take one stab at this, and instead of Kai Lang doesn't have to be one figure, it can be a class of, like, you know, super assassins that the elusive man is working on, and there's a couple of them that we have personal, you know, they're henchmen, personal antagonized relationships with. And you know what? We got a lot of guys on the hero side of the ledger that we could get Garrus to take out Kai Lang and give Garrus a hero moment that is not in the game.
That's true. I mean, you could theoretically just do like a crew of the damned kind of thing, where everyone who's died because Elusive Man had access to their DNA in the events of Mass Effect 2 comes back as in an evil version for like sort of a you know, the bad summer camp from across the lake kind of thing.
Yeah. And Zaid joined up with them too, just as a prick. Like,
exactly. You can have evil versions of Jacob and Miranda and whoever else you want to throw in there after those characters have died.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little bit we have too many heroes who are too awesome to like really like match up. Like,
yeah.
It's going to end up being a team of 5 bad guys against a team of 12 good guys. So it's not going to be a totally even match, but it's more even than 12 good guys versus 1 Kai Lang.
Exactly.
Who sucks.
And I mean, you know, you got Ashley in there probably for whatever reason, you know, or Caden, whichever one. You can bring all sorts of people back. Yeah.
This actually relates to another. This relates to another thing I have. Because my other big structural idea for this, I think, is sort of splitting up the team a bit. And if we can have the 4th, 5th seasons of the show jump or cut back and forth a little more, and there can be like maybe be a little more Game of Thrones, that we have full-blown storylines going on different sides of the galaxy.
Totally.
And there's a couple ways of doing that. One is Shepard can be on the Normandy with like part of the crew and focusing on the Reaper specific, you know, main storyline missions. And then some other part of the crew, Garrus and his team, you know, Gold Team or whatever, they have their own ship and are going off to pursue Cerberus related stuff. And, you know, we're staying in communication, we're meeting up from time to time. But if Garrus is sort of leading the B team against Cerberus, then it's less of an issue that they are more outmatched by the 3 or 4 super assassins than if there was a full 15-person complement on the Normandy, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's all just about how you use it. And you can also just have like some, you know, Knights of Ren following around in the background, you know, with like super guns and cheese graters on their helmets and stuff that are just like, it's our bad guy crew. You know, I don't know if you need all this shit, to be honest, now that I'm saying it. But we never mind having a crew of bounty hunters show up in Empire Strikes Back or Masters of the Universe and just be like, all right, these guys are mainly just creature designs, but cool. Yeah.
They each have a unique weapon.
There's plenty of room for that here. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think pulling on Star Wars as inspiration is probably not a bad idea in this case. I think that you'd like to be hitting some of the same notes as that anyway.
Mhm.
So yes, of course you can do that, and there's room for it, and it's probably an improvement on just, I don't know, some Citadel missions or something that we don't want to adapt anyway.
Yeah, I love that stuff. Again, the crew of Boba Fett's, that each of their own thing. Yeah, or well, there's an IG-88 in there and all that, like great stuff.
And maybe it's just a couple of them.
Edie?
Yeah. I don't know. Plot reasons, maybe not, but definitely any former Cerberus person. So Jacob and Miranda, I mean, that's a reason to kill them early. I don't know. I mean, here's the thing: Miranda, as the elusive man's daughter, is a more important character, perhaps.
Yes.
And a more interesting one. So maybe she's still around in her original form in Mass Effect 3 to do stuff and to be finally betrayed by him. And
I think I'm leaning towards she takes the loss here more. I don't know if we've really settled on who we're killing off in Mass Effect 2. I mean,
no, we didn't.
I think it was Samara and Jacob were high on the list.
I mean, there were some that were chalk. Yeah, Jacob is getting killed. It's not gonna happen for you, Jacob. You're too killable. But I do think that you would probably want to make some room for like what actor is clicking, where the writing, move. So that's, I think, why we didn't like plot that out specifically.
Well, we did to the extent of we decided that there was a whole like half dozen characters of Morden, Garrus, Tally, Legion, Jack, probably Thane. That's 6, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That we're not going to kill them off in 2 because their material in 3 is too good.
Yeah, but Grunt, I love Grunt. Grunt does some cool things in the later part of the game that could probably be accomplished by Rex. You can kill some of these guys depending on how it's working out. Oh, we lost some money, so I guess we're probably just going to not use Grunt. That sort of thing. There's any number of reasons why you would want to write somebody off the show, and it would probably be best determined by who's hitting and who's not. And sure. maybe you do want to take out a character that works, as well. Lose one of your beloved characters, like Oberyn Martell's got to die. It makes the show better, actually. Kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like we only have 5 years here. Like it's okay if we lose some people in year 3 and 4.
It's hopeful.
Keep things lively.
You want that to happen. All right.
Yeah. The other one, I guess, there's Kasumi. We thought was pretty killable, but
totally.
Actually, and has a mission in Mass Effect 3 that's not the best mission in Mass Effect 3, but does seem kind of tailor-made as a standalone episode for a TV show.
So, that would work. And you could do a lot of other stuff in that episode, Citadel-related kind of things. A lot of lore, a lot of world building. Have a conversation with the show's version of Captain Bailey during, all that stuff you could do, kind of set up some plot lines. It makes sense to do that, yes.
Oh, we got to kill Captain Bailey in the Cerberus coup, right? That's a body can be dropped.
Big time, yeah. Dead man walking, Captain Bailey. But I think the Cerberus coup, whenever it takes place, takes out a lot more people. I think, and is way more successful. And the Citadel is kind of doomed ultimately, so you might as well get something out of that.
Yeah, everybody in the Citadel is eventually killed, basically. So, I mean, it could be like that bullshit in Rise of Skywalker where they're like, oh, they destroyed the planet we spent the second act on, and then it turns, except every character we spoke to there made it off the planet off screen. It's still okay.
Yeah, I mean, but ultimately, I think that's something that doesn't hit in the game. Like you're just like, well, they all died, and then I guess
too much is happening, and no named characters,
right? But it should hit in the show. It should be a very big deal, like one of the grimmest moments of the game, really, or the show should be that, which is another reason to move it later in this thing. But
okay, before we get back to that, though, I do because I don't want to have to circle backwards to this.
Sure.
My other question is what to do with Anderson, because I think there's 2 roads that diverge in this wood. And my first thought is kill him off in the opening on Earth. Yeah. And just because at the end, at the end on Citadel, Shepard can have Garrus up there with him to do like the sort of final conversation.
Or whoever he's romancing even, maybe. I don't know. Or Garrus.
Yeah. I guess
if it's Yara.
Having it be the romance sort of changes the whole dynamic there. Whereas Garrus kind of slots, like, it almost feels like they could have just made it Garrus in the game if he had not been a possible corpse at that point.
I mean, Garrus is your best boy, so
I think it actually is better with Garrus.
It might actually be good with Garrus there. Yeah, that's really good. But it's really good with Anderson there. I not entirely down on Anderson not being the guy there.
It is, but I think it also gives the opening more kick if you finally kill off the Obi-Wan Kenobi character in the first act of this game.
I mean, the thing where it's cool if there's two versions going on. That's an obvious thing to do differently. Yeah.
So the other route in the woods is the complete opposite, which is do an entire arc of the Earth Resistance with him throughout the season, or seasons, and have him, put together a team. Maybe you can leave Vega with him, and
of course,
do they get there?
Of course,
have one of the Ashley's sisters join up with them because it's established he's got a few running around. You could leave Chakwas there. You could leave Kelly Chambers or like Donnelly and Daniels, any of the Cerberus personnel that are minor that survived the second game could be there. I'm not sure who else of like player characters, other than Vega, I'm that comfortable leaving there. But I guess you do want, if it's going to be a full blown storyline, you do want some people you care about there.
You need somebody there. I mean, who can slot in there? What's his ass? Zaid could be.
Zaid could, yes. Yeah, if he's not doing the other thing we mentioned.
Right. No, you want Javik on the thing.
Yeah, you need Javik with you. You need Rex and these people.
A lot of plot need for people, but yeah, I mean,
if it's Caden, I guess he's still alive at this point. He could be there. But do you need him for the? Do you need him for the coup?
Yeah.
I think you do need him for the coup.
You do.
Have somebody else do that.
Okay, well.
So that's the trouble there, is stocking it up with people. Like, filling up the fourth season with red shirts feels like that's going to be the D plot, no matter how much screen time you give it.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe if you're really trying to pad things out.
Well, I don't know how much you actually need to check in there. Just a little bit every now and then, and maybe one episode significant plot line there, more than covers the resistance at home. I mean, I think we're staying mostly with Shepard. I think it is a sand snake sized part of the season.
That's why I'm not totally sold on it. And the sand snakes, for much people griped about them, also like they were one plot line out of 14 in that season.
Exactly.
And if this is one plot line out of like 3 major plot lines, then that is potentially a much bigger handicap.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you could theoretically just put Anderson on the Normandy and he's there for this run. Yeah. Okay.
That's Shepard. That's Shepard's in charge there at this point. If not,
no, I kind of like killing him of the two options.
And that is the one I lean towards.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Write him out. I mean, we still got Hackett running around. We can still kind of use him in the bureaucratic role, which I guess is what happens in Mass Effect 3 already. And his role in the finale can easily be replaced with Garrus or somebody else even. But yeah.
It's not like there's any crucial information coming from Earth and from Anderson throughout this game. You check in with them periodically, but it's just like, oh yeah, things are pretty rough down here.
I mean, we are starting.
I have faith in you, boy.
The invasion of Earth is the first episode of season 4, right? I mean, it's Reapers appearing in the sky, the Vancouver blowing up and towers going down, and lasers on Earth, and the kid in the vent gets destroyed. All that stuff is first episode of this season, right? That's the idea. So yes, that's where Anderson would die, I think.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you're trying to drag this out the most you could, maybe you could do like an episode of setup of like Shepard being court-martialed, and
I want that. I want that. I want the court-martial.
And you're cutting to the Citadel and seeing what the other people are up to in the meantime. Maybe getting some Liara on Mars and the sort of Cerberus infiltration there. But it's definitely like the end of the first episode. The cut to black is on Reapers falling through the sky and blowing shit up.
I mean, yeah.
No, you can't go any farther than that.
The title drop, the shot of the title drop from Mass Effect 3, you need to replicate into the show, even though it's not a title drop. But yeah, it's the credits of the first episode. But yeah, I do want to keep that courtroom stuff, and along with like the Quarian court-martial segment, which we would have done at this point. I like that the show can just turn into a legal thriller a little bit occasionally. I think that's worthy.
Okay, and from there you go to Mars, and then the Citadel, and then to Palaven, which could be 2 episodes. I mean, you could do one whole episode on Mars.
Yeah, totally.
There's not, I guess, one of those things where you remember it as being this long, involved mission because there's a ton of combat, but is there really an hour's worth of plot there?
No.
Not as it's presented, but
no.
But we can also, this is going to be an action-oriented show, so you can do quite a bit of corridor shooting, even in this format.
I think that all of a sudden the show is way more combat. You know, there's a lot more combat going on in this finale, because it's the wrap-up, and you want to underline world at war stuff. Galaxy at war. So you're going to see a lot more of that, I would think. I would hope that wouldn't change the pacing of the show. But I mean, I don't know.
No, because I don't think you're
always
skimping on action that much in the first 2 seasons anyway.
Right.
Even if you're making time to do a trial episode. Somebody's still shooting some robots in that episode, probably.
Probably. Okay. Fair point.
The question is, what do you do on Mars? That you meet up with the Yara, you get the ED body. Again, I don't know if we need to replicate the exact ED body, but I guess we acquire it in the same way. I do kind of like the idea of actually the bad team from the Summer Camp Across the Lake having the sexy ED body with the oversized breasts to compare it to our like Ex Machina, toned down version.
Sure. That's fun. Okay. Yeah, you could just do evil ED. Could just be entirely its own thing because it's Cerberus tech, I suppose. Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, look, you do all that stuff. Yeah. Is Caden injured? Are we even bother including that to get him off the thing?
Yeah, I think so.
Then he's in the Huerta Memorial Hospital on the Citadel, and he's present for the coup. I don't know. This feels like a way to write Caden off a little bit if it's a show.
I mean, that's what it is in the game. Is they're writing that character out of the first act of the game, which is, I think, fine. Again, we're switching things up. We're going to collect Morden and Garrus and Rex in the next couple of episodes to refill the Normandy. So I don't think we're lacking in anything, or lacking in characters anyway.
True enough.
And that sort of leaves him there to be on the Citadel with Udina and set that up. And then, so
I can imagine some Revenge of the Sith like scenes between the two of them. Actually,
okay. So if we go from Earth to Mars to the Citadel and Palaven in 3 episodes, then by the 4th episode we're moving on to Surkesh and meeting up with Morden. And then we're so making 5 and 6 are on Tuchanka. Well,
that is, I think, the main plot line of this 4th season. Theoretically, here is the destruction of the Genophage, and that's probably where you're landing in the penultimate episode. Is the big events of Tuchanka. I want to see if you can put some other stuff in earlier. Start threading in Leviathan, maybe. Maybe even do the Omega plot line in this time. You're probably doing stuff with Arya when you're at the Citadel.
Omega is something that is getting handled by Garrus's B team if we're going that route, though.
You think?
Yeah, I think that's. I don't think Shepard's even there. I think we're cutting across the galaxy from Surkesh to Omega. In that case,
I'm good with that. Yeah.
And then, I guess it raises the question, though, and I think it's the same question of: do you want to end? You want to end this on Tuchanka, not on the Citadel coup?
Well, it's episodes 9 and 10, or whatever the finale is. The last 2 episodes, I think, would be. Well, it'd either be 2 on Tuchanka, I guess, or Tuchanka and then the coup.
Well, there's the stuff that there's, the Kasumi mission,
it comes back to
Samara's daughter's stuff, Omega, the Grunt Rachni mission, the Jack mission. These are all things that could be their own sort of like built out into their own episodes, or they could be B plots that we're cutting back and forth from between what Shepard's doing in the main storyline, and other people meeting up with their old friends and doing this stuff, other stuff. And I do think that's probably better overall, because again, it's a thing in a video game. Yes, you want Shepard doing all this stuff yourself because you're the one controlling that. But in this, I think it helps for the sense of scope, scale, and chaos that we're having to spread ourselves kind of thin here.
Yeah, I like that, though. I mean, you could do the Kasumi Citadel plotline in the same episode as the Rachni plotline with Grunt.
Sure. Just deciding who's doing what.
Makes sense. Right. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. I mean, when we're doing these breakaway missions, you're probably not going to give them all to Garrus. You want to do maybe Liara gets a chance to lead one, or Tally, or something like that.
Yeah, we break it down.
Could happen.
I'm going to want to do a different Rubik's Cube combination of characters for each of them.
Exactly. Like, who's going to be most fun hanging out with Grunt for the Rachni and doing slime-based aliens stuff? I don't know. Maybe Liara. It might be fun to do
because she's the worst suited to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. That could be. Yeah. Again, I would say of all those, the only one that you might want to be sure to include Shepard on is the Jack part.
Yeah, I like
depends
that.
How we handle Jack romance stuff in the prior seasons.
And again, this is all stuff if you're doing two versions, if you're doing a red and blue series, you can mess with all this in the other version.
And, well, I guess another structural question comes up. You could flip around the order of, like, Tachanka and Rannoch and do the Quarrying Guest stuff before you do the Cure the Genophage stuff.
I don't know. I think the Genophage plot line is such a high point of the series in general. I think it is. I think deserves to be the major thrust of season 4 as we're doing it. Like that. That's sort of such a good bit of Mass Effect that I think giving it its proper showcase is appropriate. The Rannoch stuff I think is less successful and can be resolved kind of without feeling like the end of a season.
I agree. It is arguably just as important in terms of lore to the world. But
it's important.
Not dramatically articulated nearly as well in the game. And sure, we can always say, well, we're going to do it better. But and I suppose there's also a question of putting it later give it more importance? I don't think in a TV version. I think making it a finale what gives it importance.
That's true, but I do think you want it later, because ultimately what this show is going to be about is organics relationship with AI. That's what Mass Effect's about in the end. So the Quarian Geth stuff is very much ballast for that. That is going to bolster that.
And that doesn't mean you want it earlier.
Wherever it comes, that's true. Well, it has to be done intelligently and determinedly. You have to have that in mind when you place it. I think you make it all a major focus of season 5, and I think that works.
Yeah.
I could see the argument for bringing it in season 4, though.
Yeah, the argument
I just like the
is basically that otherwise we get an entire season without Tally.
She can be running around doing shit. It's fine. Yeah, like there's a way to put Tally in there.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really have to be a revelation to us. Have like it is in the game. It's like a revelation halfway through that where are the Quarians doing? Oh, they started a war with the Geth and we didn't realize it. It's like, yeah, if you can realize exactly what's going on with them, and that doesn't make them any more. Yeah, that's percolating
all through season 4. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh shit, we got to go deal with that after this kind of thing.
Hell,
it'll be after
maybe
this.
Maybe that's our Dorn plot. Our F plot. This is that actually throughout season 4 we are cutting to just Tally sort of walking us through the Quarian Geth War.
Oh yeah,
how that's developing.
There's probably one episode that's like half about Tally dealing with that shit. Maybe that's good. That's
or
okay.
It's threaded.
It's the same one as the Jack episode or something. It's happening at the same time.
Well,
as
it could be half of one episode, or it could be 1 to 2 episodes per episode spread across 6 episodes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm coming around this. We do want to include the Leviathan stuff. We need
that could just be its own kind of episode. I think. I don't think you need to layer that in. I think you just do a streamlined kind of version of Leviathan that takes place in one episode.
Or it could be Liara doing an investigation across 4 episodes while other stuff's going on, and it's sort of her doing Obi-Wan stuff from Attack of the Clones.
Well, maybe. I kind of like the idea of Morden getting involved in that.
but
which he could only do
he's pretty
before.
occupied.
Well, what Morden could do is he could come in as a consultant in one episode if it's an ongoing
That's
plot
true.
line, and I kind of want his perspective on the thing. I mean, it's another just like put Morden in scenes with people. You know, I want to see that dynamic with Liara or whoever. You know, scenes where he's not just talking to Shepard. Do it. Have more of that for sure, and maybe a little time off from the Genophage plot line. You know. Is not a bad idea because yes, he's preoccupied with that, sure, but like, you know, you want as much Morden as possible.
Yeah, I guess there's another thing here that is nice about this setting and all, and especially with the World at War stuff. That these people have cell phones, you know, so there's no reason that just because Liara's on the other side of the galaxy, she can't be consulting with Morden or Shepard or whoever, keeping us up to date. But also, whenever it becomes dramatically convenient for us to be out of contact with people, you say, "Oh, well, the Reapers are blocking communication from that zone or whatever." Like, we can turn off the cell phones as easy, when and if we desire in this whole couple of seasons, which is actually really nice for any modern day or sci-fi setting.
Oh, here's what you do. You have Liara and Javik be at the center of the Leviathan plotline. It's them working together on a thing. She needs his understanding of the old cultures. And it's, you know, and it's that sort of, it's that dynamic. It's kind of the episode about them, maybe, is the Leviathan.
He's too old for this shit.
You know, because a little of that, but also kind of just like they're learning what the other has to offer, you know. And it is kind of like, it's an old guy and a young buck kind of dynamic, and he's disappointing in some ways. That like the hero worship of that Liara has for the Protheans kind of coming to a head in this disappointing avatar of them is one of the great things in the game. Here's a way to sort of dramatize that in a way, and with a plot line that pokes at it a little bit. Yeah, I'm excited. I want that now. Now I want that.
Okay.
And yeah, you can do it while Shepard's off getting Jack from the academy or something like that. Yeah. I don't know. Or it's its own whole thing. This works. This is good stuff.
There's plenty to pull
be adapted.
And I think, as you know, we established in the prior seasons that we're targeting about 8 episodes per season. Then we fill that out pretty easily, you know, between
no problem.
Earth, Mars, a couple episodes of T'Chaka, a couple episodes on Rannoch, maybe 3 on Rannoch actually, or if not on it, in and around it. One that's devoted to the Citadel coup. You know, you gotta do one for Sanctuary, one for Thessia, one for Citadel DLC, one for the Elusive Man's base at the end, and a finale on Earth. I think you've got, you know, 14, 15 episodes there without breaking a sweat.
True, but, you know, I want those kind of side quest episodes. I think those kind of are bread and butter for the show. There's some good opportunities to have them in season 3, even as they're, you know, the plot line is kind of forcing itself into a direct path to the end. I wouldn't want to lose that part of the show or the game, I guess, identity, and there's room for it. I think. So
now,
and you know, I don't know that we need every single plot beat from the game. No, we don't. You know, the Elusive Man's base could probably be handled on Sanctuary or something like that. That could be compressed. Yeah. The main figuring out the Elusive Man's deal. That's a big part of this, I think. Like just solving him, making it work better than the game. That is a big thing I would need the show to achieve, especially considering he's basically the big bad. He's essentially the villain of the thing. Ultimately,
I think his deal is that he is into genetic engineering and improving humans through science. Part of his, you know, human xenophobic, like supremacist ideas of getting us, pushing us ahead of the other races. And that leads him to be, you know, he takes the future of humanity as his guiding principle. And that leads him to take the Reapers seriously when they first show up. But then also, as he's indoctrinated, it leads to him deciding that he can incorporate Reaper technology and whatnot into his research. And that just lets them into the back door and lets them start driving.
That is essentially his deal, I suppose. I don't think it's very well represented dramatically. Like the sort of the switch between uneasy ally in Mass Effect 2 to he's the villain in Mass Effect 3 is happens off camera in between games is, ultimately you're just kind of like, well, I guess he was exposed to indoctrination is where you have to land with it.
Well, but Mass Effect 2 also is telegraphing
it,
so heavily that, like, don't get too attached to this guy. Like, he's not actually your friend.
True enough.
We know that's coming. And the show doesn't.
Frankly, too much, to be honest. I mean, if there was room for that to maybe be possible, if there's room to us maybe seeing this guy's point and him being okay, that would be, well, it's more than the game offered, which is tough. I know. He's a rich man. He's Elon Musk, essentially. It's going to be hard to make that character trustworthy and maybe not even desirable to do so.
Not trustworthy, but maybe a little
this would only
more than...
and considering the show would only be possible through the benefice of a crazy billionaire like Jeff Bezos or somebody like that. I don't know what that means for how this character.
It just means that if he raises an eyebrow about it, say, "Oh yeah, we're kind of low key basing that character on your rival Elon Musk or whoever his rival is that day."
Sure. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. But I don't know, that feels like such a significant character for where we are culturally right now that you would want to underline that comparison. You would want to make that the thing.
Well, he's going to get more screen time.
Like he's
here
like,
he
can't fucking.
It's just easier to do scenes that Shepard is not present for in our TV versions. I guess in some ways the games are longer than a streaming series would be, but that's
in some ways. Yes.
But there's more scenes of drama, and those hours are spent shooting things on Omega. Not doing. But there's more. The Elusive Man will have more lines of dialogue for certain in a streaming series than he does in the game series. But we're circling back around now to the endings, and we have to kind of decide what do we want to do. Which of the four existing endings that are out there, which one do we want to go with, or do we want to invent something else from whole cloth?
Okay, well, all apologies out, but the total defeat ending is probably off the table here, I think.
Okay, well, I think I
the kick the can down the road for the next generation, 50,000 years later ending. I don't think that's going to play.
I think Control and Synthesis are also completely off the board, as far as I'm concerned.
Well,
so I think that leaves us with one option.
Hang on. Synthesis this is interesting. In the game, Control is the elusive man's plan. That's his ultimate thing. He will the Control ending is essentially what he wanted to do. But
except that was
is not Synthesis kind of his deal too? Like that transhumanism kind of thing is essentially what he is all about from the beginning. This is like before he kind of gets his plan for Control. He's all about the transhumanism. No, we have to be cyborgs to conquer the stars. My daughter Miranda, for example.
Well, even just the game version,
versions of ourselves.
Shepard is now the 6 million credit man. It's
right.
But you're right. That's a problem with it.
So that's kind of his thing too. Yeah,
it plays even worse on TV though than it would in a game. I think the fact that Control,
it's terrible.
Control is the elusive man's evil plan. It's a trap that plays on his hubris that ends up costing him his humanity, and then just turns around and it's like, but the exact same thing works totally for Shepard because they just are that special. As the elusive man was so foolish as to think he was, and Shepard just is, and in a video game that is very based in just being a power fantasy at its base level. That kind of plays. It's still, I don't think it's good, but I think it would play as hugely just like a false note. Watch in a third person, viewing experience of watching an actor play it out. And then Synthesis is nonsense for a lot of the same reasons. Utterly monstrous nonsense on top of that, in my opinion. I'm still 12 years later baffled by what they're going for there. Like, I guess
transhumanism.
Yeah, it's like allegorical. It's a nice thought. I guess that the prime value there is like unity, and we're going to transcend all of our sectarian squabbles and be one tribe of not just humans but all organic and artificial creatures.
It's essentially the same argument as the way to solve racism is that everyone fucks until we're all the same color. It's essentially that.
I think that is kind of ultimately what it amounts to. but I don't know if
green in this
yeah,
case. We're all green.
I mean, I don't know that it matters if we embrace that as like philosophy for defeating racism. It's just kind of what people are going to do anyway. But
well, fingers crossed. Yes,
people are bad in a lot of ways, but one thing that they always come back to is they like fucking each other. Anyway, I guess the thing that bugs me about it, if you value diversity as an actual value, then synthesis is a travesty, right? Like, am I understanding? Like, is the whole galaxy just like John Carpenter?
There's so many unanswered questions.
We're just one biomass.
There's so many unanswered questions about what this means. Yeah, is it a collective consciousness? Yeah. Who knows? Is it essentially that? That's how the Geth are presented. Mm-hmm. So maybe, like we're connected to each other. Okay. What's that mean? Is it, or is it just like I don't know? Is it the spirit of Awa living in the tree? Kind of connects us all. Kind of,
there has been no
individuals experiencing life subjectively.
I think
it's.
I think we're the Borg.
A million unanswered questions about synthesis.
I think it's the Borg.
We might be the Borg.
And anyway, so we're not doing that. All right. The thing, and I mentioned this in passing at one point, that I had I think my ideal ending for this probably doesn't work, but it is a combination of the destroy and reject endings with some indoctrination theory possibilities left open there. But whatever that is, I think the best ending for this, if you presented me with Mass Effect as a new thing, as scripts for a new thing, what I would sort of say is, I think you have too much going on with some of these endings, and what it should be is, if you're sticking with as much of this as possible, the Crucible comes in and all of that, and it turns out that what the Crucible does is not. This is a reveal in the finale that sort of like Shepard and Hackett have known this, but everybody else has not. But the Crucible is not actually going to create space lasers that destroy only the bad guys. It's actually just going to set off a chain reaction that will destroy all of the mass relays without destroying the star systems they're in, like we've seen previously. Mm-hmm. And what that will do is strand the fleets, the massed fleets of the galaxy in the Earth system with the Reapers for one last big final stand that they probably can't win. But now the Reapers are also sort of stranded there, and it will take them centuries to millennia to spread out and try and wipe out the rest of the galaxy, in which time the rest of the galaxy will have to rebuild and come up with new technologies. And it's a pretty big bummer ending, but it's kind of a twist ending. And you can leave it open as, the battle's not over as we fade to black. Shepard's dying, but maybe they pulled it off. And I think that would be the best. The only reason why that, or not the only reason, there are arguments against it, but I don't think it works kind of in our current reality, because what it is, it's stuff that's already in all the existing endings, but it's doing less in some ways than just.
It's elliptical in a way I think that would infuriate people. There's that.
I don't mind that.
You don't mind that. The people who couldn't take it that Shepard dies in the end of the game would mind that quite a bit, I think. Which would probably be a fairly significant amount of the audience.
Do you think that's the same thing, though, if Shepard is somebody we're watching on TV versus somebody who is me?
I don't know. It's tough because the ending of Mass Effect 3 exists already. Like, people have had long enough to kind of understand that this is the ending of the story, and that I think if you know much about the games at all, you know that it is a controversial ending. So there's the actual ending of Mass Effect 3 kind of hangs over the whole show in a way.
That's the problem.
And yeah, it becomes you kind of have to do it or subvert it.
And because we were talking about if you're.
And I don't think this quite does enough of either of those things.
I think that's the problem.
It's sort of.
I think dramatically it pays off everything I want paid off, and also kind of throws in a little kind of a gut punch at the end there that I like, and it has an electrical quality. All that's fine for me. The problem, I think, like we said, at this point, you're now 5 seasons into a huge mega budget show. So the only way it gets this far is if it's a pretty huge pop cultural hit. And then everybody's going to, a sizable chunk of the audience will know about the the endings, have seen them themselves, and know that it includes the stuff about destroying the mass relays. Plus, there's other stuff on top of it. And even another sizable chunk of the audience at that point will not have been able to help themselves and will have Googled some information about it and know that too. So yeah, it's some way it's doing less, even though I think it works better dramatically. But I think that still kind of ruins the audience ability to engage with it in an unfortunate way.
I do think you need to end this show with him defeating the Reapers.
I think this does defeat the Reapers. I mean, to me, this translates to a defeat of the Reapers. Actually,
I mean, in a longer scale that happens after the show ends. But that's not what I feel like. It can't do that. And this, of course, is. I mean, look, this is a problem in the game too. I mean, we've talked about how it's difficult to actually pay off cosmic horror in this way. Like it can only kind of be a flavoring in your story, not actual cosmic horror, because that doesn't work dramatically in most narratives. And Mass Effect is definitely one of those. You can't actually follow through on the implications of the Reapers. I could have sworn when I was playing this game first, I was sure that the way this is going to end is what happens with Legion and the Heretic Geth, where it's just like, no, here's what we can do. We can rewrite them. You know, it's I guess a version of Control ending, but it seemed like it was there to set up the end of the game to me when it happened the first time. And I'm kind of surprised that doesn't happen. Essentially, it seems like the easiest way out of all this. I think back when this first came out, you were the one who first made the prediction that I hadn't really given any thought at that point, but it seemed really obvious at the gate when you mentioned it that, like, well, probably it's going to come down to you have to decide whether to save Earth or save like the other alien races, and that'll be the Paragon Renegade choice at the end. I'm like, oh yeah, that actually would track very well. I mean, it's sort of the decision to save the council at the end of the first game, but blown up on the scale front a little bit. And you could work something like that in here, but I don't know. I mean, well, I guess here's the thing I like that is in the game, but is not articulated well in it, that I kind of like to articulate better, which is the idea that we're spend the whole game bringing all these different races together in their fleets and taking them to the Sol system where Earth is. And then we're just, whatever happens, we're destroying the mass relays and people will be stranded there. And so what that does is it then creates a sort of Noah's Ark situation for rebuilding the galaxy, where starting from this hub around Earth, but also all the other races are kind of represented there, and will be, building up in a different form. And that is, I like that as an aspect of the ending. Again, it's kind of implicit, but weirdly not stated at all in the game and on the show. I would like it to be, and I think all you need for that to happen really is to destroy the mass relays, and then you can defeat the Reapers in whatever manner you want. I'm cool with that. I kind of like that, actually. That I think is a neat way of doing it. Is to have just sort of a really like over a crazy diverse, like highly inflated population of aliens stuck in Milky Way, or not Milky Way, in our solar system, I guess would be the thing. And then the Reapers are defeated, but there's no more contact. There's no more communicating, or at least I don't know, maybe they can communicate, but there's no more traveling.
Yeah, there might be still radio contact with the way that you're able to talk to Anderson across the way, but you can't no longer. I don't even know if that was supposed to utilize the mass relay system in some way, but you're not traveling anywhere. Right. You're not none of those soldiers on those ships are seeing their families again for 500 years.
Right. Maybe the Asari,
maybe the Krogan
can make it back home in their lifetimes, but probably not. And that's just the new state of affairs. And well, frankly, you know what? You can do a sequel show there if it shows like it, because that's an interesting place to set it. A bunch of aliens. There's no faster than light travel.
And
what are we going to do about resources? I don't know. We got to figure this shit out. Stuff like that. That could be cool. And yes, the galaxy would then be saved as well.
Well, and I do think that, talked about it being a little obtuse or whatever, but I think that's inherent in sci-fi, like heady sci-fi always
Well,
ends with sort of throwing open a door to some completely new state of affairs, but not really showing you what comes next. And I guess that's what the synthesis ending is going for.
that is the
Yeah.
synthesis ending.
But that's what 2001 is doing. That is what Escape from LA is doing in a way. There's some Escape from LA in this ending.
That's true.
I will
Yeah.
say.
Okay.
Not the greatest example of
It's hell of an
sci-fi,
ending.
but yes, a great ending, of course. And so you do need to leave some things up in the air. Now, I like indoctrination theory for a lot of reasons we went over last time. And I think it's sort of, as a concept, it's more tailored to film or TV than it is to games in the first place. I mean, for all I went over to last time about how mechanically, I think it actually uses game mechanics in really interesting ways to sort of try and work on the gamer, like represent the effects of subconscious influence and brainwashing and manipulation on the character in a way that works differently on the gamer that they won't realize necessarily. But you can do it in TV in much more the traditional way, which is you leave a couple things ambiguous, some Easter eggs here and there, and then you can have the explainer videos and articles go up online of, oh, but it's all a dream after this point. And you just never confirm that or deny it. Doing so only doesn't help anything. It can be the ending of The Sopranos to a degree.
Well, what?
As much as this is not The Sopranos, it could have its own version of that.
Interesting. It feels like to me the way that has to end, if you're doing the indoctrination ending, is basically you would have to be like, okay, we're going to present the synthesis ending as a possibility. Like little space kid still shows up, has that conversation, and then Shepard rejects that because it's nonsense and picks the destroy.
Well, you have to at least present
to
control as an option, right? Because the Elusive Man already is angling for that.
Well, I mean, I think you can do that, yes, but essentially, I think synthesis has to be the honeypot, has to be the the fake reality that is being sold. That you can make an intellectual argument for, but falls apart if you actually start to interrogate it, which is what Shepard would then do, and then choose the destroy ending.
Yes,
which I think is probably the way to adapt the end of the game. If you're if you're not subverting it, if you just want to do the end of the game in all its, I don't know. Yeah, I guess you could just do synthesis. It would look terrible. It would not work on screen. But I think that you could just do a version of the indoctrination ending where he picks destroy.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
And that is the successful, that is his ultimate victory. Is that no? I fucking got the Reapers at the end. Like I'm a soldier. I came up to do a soldier thing. I'm not, I'm not getting waylaid by the siren song of synthesis because it's nonsense. And I'm going to do what I came here to do. And yes, maybe it blows up all the Mass Effects. Maybe we're stuck in the thing, but we have defeated the Reapers, and that's the end of the game and the end of the story. And probably Shepard dies.
Well, one of the reasons I actually like the destroy ending, even in the game aspect of it, is because. Not so much for the destroying itself, but as rejecting the control option specifically.
Well, that's like the worst option.
Well, but because it allows me to superimpose a sort of character arc onto my Shepard, who has been the most important person in the galaxy throughout all this, but that somehow they're learning humility through like all the people I've killed off along the way too, and that.
Okay. That works.
In a game format, which is all about
ignore synthesis completely,
but especially in a game format where it's all about how special you, the player, are, and you're the most important, most powerful person in that world has ever seen by the end. Of course, that's just how games are structured, and cutting against that for dramatic purposes works for me in a game format. I don't know. We've talked about sort of decentering Shepard as much as we can from the get-go, while still making them the main character, but not having to be the actual fulcrum of all galactic events that take place over these 5 years. So I don't know if that plays exactly as strongly, but it doesn't change, I think, what your conclusion there, which is that the destroy ending is what it has to be. The only thing, the version that they reject, I think, is possible, even though it's still going to piss people off, is just it's way more open-ended, whether we win or lose. It's less explicit about, and then we all died. It just sort of fades to black with Shepard dying as the battle is still going on, and it's kind of a lady or tiger ending. It's not confirmed, but
look, I mean, that would definitely piss people off, and I guess there's appeal in that. But I mean, come on, this is, this has to play in the Star Wars kind of sandbox a little bit. Like, if this is going to be a hit enough to justify its cost, it has to function for an audience the way a Star Wars does.
I don't know.
At least on some level.
I suppose, yeah. If it's there, then you're not just letting it end here.
Yeah,
it has to be.
Yeah, you'll be like, okay, well, here's how you fix the end of Mass Effect, and then you'll get a lot of that. You get like, much like you did with the series.
But that's a mark that the thing was successful at this point in our cultural existence. If you're not getting that, then
I don't know.
Work.
I think, okay, an end game. You want this to land like end game.
Okay, yeah, that's certainly like from a commercial standpoint. Yes, that is pays off everything. Pisses off pretty much no one.
Yeah, and it also has a finality to it.
Yes, that's what I mean by paying things
so much
off.
So that
it does feel like an ending.
So much so that the rest of the MCU is now kind of just like struggling to ever really have its own identity anymore. After that, it's it was kind of done. So I think you want that.
Well, you know what?
I think I don't know. I mean, I guess that goes against the current model of distribution, but like I think it's still desirable from a narrative level, from an artistic.
That model also may be collapsing underneath our feet as we speak. So who knows if in 4 years' time when this actually comes out, will things get better after that? Probably not. Anyway, no, but well, the Marvel thing is an interesting comparison, I think, because part of what post Endgame they're struggling with is that there was a finality to that, and yet they have to pick up right afterwards, and they've lost some key characters, but a lot of the older guard are still around, and they don't quite know what to do with them and how to integrate that. And what they needed was something more like Mass Effect Andromeda did, which is a flawed game. We'll talk about eventually, maybe, but I still contend is actually the perfect concept for following up on Mass Effect.
You can see how they got there. That's for sure.
It's almost an Elseworld thing, but it allows you to use all the same lore and the races and technology and the art design, but set it in a completely different galaxy, a different location with different enemies, and sort of free of the shadow of Emperor Palpatine having to loom over the entire sequel trilogy. You know what I mean?
Well, there was I don't know. I always had a fun idea that I'd heard, or maybe I came up with. I don't know where this originated, but the premise of Andromeda is, that you go to the next galaxy over as sort of a Noah's Ark during the Reaper invasion. They send an assortment of the races over to the next galaxy to kind of start over in case it all goes bad with the Reapers, and it's an exploration thing. It's exploring the brave new world kind of thing of like what's on the other side of the beyond known space kind of
thing. I love that.
That's cool. I love the idea that for a 3-game arc of Andromeda, what ends up happening is that the synthesis ending has occurred in Milky Way, and they are now an invading force like the Borg.
Oh, that is so good, man. I love that. I mean, I hate it in
like
that
all of a sudden, that's evil. Yeah, that's a bad thing that happened, and now we have to deal with it.
I hate that as a thinking of my Shepard actually being in that continuity. That's how it panned out. I love that as my Andromeda continuity, though.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. We're talking about Mass Effect Andromeda. That means it's time to wrap up. It's so hard to say goodbye to this trilogy for us because we both love it.
It's been a blast. Is this the end though? Are we done with Mass Effect? I think what I've realized during this game is I'm probably never done with Mass Effect. I think I'm going to play this again in my life. It might be a while, but I think we've kind of hit the point in video games where you can go back and play older things, like it used to be. I'm not picking up a Super Nintendo game. It's just the technology is too outdated. It's moved too far. I can't go back. I think at some point around PlayStation 3, we hit a point where no, you can go back. They still work. They're still playable. There'll be some graphic jank. It won't look as good as you're used to in new games, but they're still very playable and they're still very available. And this game is kind of this is going to be kind of part of my life.
Backwards compatibility has become much easier to accomplish. But I mean, I guess the simple answer is no. This is absolutely not. We're not done with this because it is going to be on screens. On TV or movie screens at some point in the next decade, probably in a much worse format than everything we just laid out for them for free.
Totally,
but we're going to see that, and that's probably going to prompt us to play
this again in my 50s
when that's out.
Yeah, when this comes out, and I'm 50, I'll play Mass Effect again. I'm sure, and then again, once I retire, I'm gonna, probably time to break out the old Mass Effect, and my kids will make fun of me. It'll be great. But this is with me for life now. It's that good of a world. It's that good of a narrative. And, it's one of the foundational blocks in the IP that makes up our lives.
Yeah. I mean, that's true for us. We're somewhat minorities, but that might change if they do a good job of putting it out there. But yes, I do. This is, one of those worlds that retains an appeal to me. Like Star Wars, no matter how many bad Star Wars they put out, that is a universe I will always want to go back to. And I will always want the next thing to be good. And I will always mentally drift back to the Mass Effect universe.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're going to play Andromeda again. We're so into it.
I think we're doing Dragon Age first, though. First, we're going to the land of Thedas.
We need a break. Thedas coming up. Mm-hmm. I don't know when, but I just started playing Dragon Age Origins. So wheels are in motion. It's coming up. That'll be the next time we talk about BioWare.
Maybe Christmas 2024. We'll see.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. Not in time for the new Dragon Age game, of course, but we will get to that in due time.
We're taking our time with us.
Yeah. Okay, quick last Mass Effect. Who is your MVP voiceover?
Voice actor? Ooh.
Yeah.
It's
tough. It's really tough.
Jennifer Hale is the chalk choice. That is
right, but you can have a very, very successful Mass Effect without her in it at all. Is the thing? Yeah.
I guess I want to give it to the guy Michael Beatty, who does Morden, but he only does a Mass Effect 2, and he's replaced Mass Effect 3.
Correct.
So I guess that means it falls down to Liz Sroka, who does Tali.
Yes. Well, it's between her and Brandon Keener, who does Garrus for me. Really it's Garrus or Tali is my MVP.
Yeah.
Liara is close too, but it's one of those.
But Garrus has that distinctive voice. Yeah. I think of
Garrus, I think, is my guy.
His tonality so much. Yeah. That. It's good stuff. But of course, in the end, I choose my space girlfriend, Tali, and you choose your space boyfriend, Garrus.
He's a terrible romantic match. But yes, he's still my MVP. Okay. Well, that's that, man. I hope this show happens in some form or another. Hopefully one like we talked about. It can withstand it. It would pay off in such a big way for whatever mad billionaire chose to fund it.